Good morning, everybody. As you can see, the hoodie is off. Temperature went from the 40s right up to about 60 degrees in no time flat as I was feeding all the barnyard crew. I have my biblical scholar here today. This is Berta. She is the expert in all things Psalms, because we're going to talk about Psalm. We've visited it before a little earlier, Psalm 145. Something you need to know about the Psalms: they were written as the Psalter. The Psalter is simply book of Psalms, book of hymns that would either be sung or recited as their worship service. Now, if you go to church, practically every church has a hymn book. This was their hymn book. Now, Psalm 145 is actually the last psalm of the Psalter. Now, you might be saying, hey, wait, Pastor Rod, it goes up to 150 in my Bible. Yeah, it does in mine too. But those last 5 psalms are actually a doxology. They were tucked on there afterwards to kind of, be an exclamation point, if you will, to the whole book. But Psalm 145, it's the last book of what they call Book 5. Now, Book 5 of the Psalms was actually, as far as we can really tell, it was written in post-exilic times. What we mean by that is the people had been carried off after the Babylonian Empire had swept in, and now they found themselves in Babylon. But under the Persian Empire that then came later, the people were allowed to return home. So now this is post-exilic times. Now they're back home from the exile, and the Book 5 of the Psalms were written during that time. And it was kind of an interesting time in that the people still yearned for a king. Now remember, these people, probably all of them, were born in exile. They had been born in Babylon, except for the ones who were left behind. So you have this mix of people who didn't know anything about Jerusalem or the whole promised land, and you have the people who had stayed behind but were under not very good conditions there either. You have them all coming together, and I'm sure they're doing some talking, this, that, and the other, and they yearn for a king, but they're not allowed to have their own king. The only king was the Persian king. Or is it? I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever. Oh, no, not forever. Forever and ever. My God and King. That's Yahweh. No, wait a minute. God and King. You know what it actually is in the Hebrew? It's my God, the King. The King. Oh, most translations, especially the New Revised Standard Version and also the Revised Standard Version, they just say, my God, my King. No, it's my God, the King. This psalm is establishing, as the last book of the Psalter, it's establishing that we do have a king. Not a human king who sits on a throne, but a glorious heavenly king who sits up above watching over us. It's interesting that they wanted to put the emphasis on this, and it comes right at the end of the Psalter. My God, the King. And also it went on, as I read, and bless your name forevermore. Name is a big thing in the Hebrew Scriptures. We've seen it happen time and time and time again where somebody's name got changed. It got changed to reflect a new relationship with the people. Jacob's name got changed to Israel. Right? Remember that? New relationship between Jacob and God. Between Jacob and Yahweh. So a name is very, very important. It contains all the essence of who that person is, who that God is. And that's what the rest of the psalm reading that we have for this week, it only goes through up through verse 8, and there's 21 verses. But right up through verse 8, it's very important to zero in on all these different words that talk about the essence. What's included in that name that we extol, that we exalt forever and ever. You see different things such as, God is great and he's good. And these things are repeated in kind of like doublet form. Remember, this is poetic stuff here that we often lose in our English translations, but it's there in the Hebrew. Especially, they end up having a lot of rhyming sounds to them as well. But God is great, he's good, he's compassionate, he's righteous, and, oh man, that word pops up again, hesed. This whole thing about his grace and mercy. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. And we see that everywhere in the Old Testament. It actually goes back to the book of Exodus, but we find it kind of scattered everywhere. And to me, when you see something like that, you need to pay attention to it, because that is probably the ideal, the most important attribute that we can see about God, especially as the people experienced Yahweh, God, all through the Hebrew Scriptures. Slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. Now, the main point that the person wants to get across here, and scholars think this was probably a psalm that was sung for the people as they entered into worship time, is that yes, we do have a king, but he's not only our king, he is a king over all the nations. Is that correct? Oh, Hebrew scholar. Yes, study that word. Yep. She was taking a second look there, and she says, yep, it's right. It's right. God's blessings be with you this day as we have a lot of fun with another beautiful, sunny, blue day. And my Hebrew scholar and I, we're going to sit here and just read a little bit more of this psalm and relish the fact that God is our King. Blessings be with you. Have an awesome day.